I'm Adam Todd, and welcome to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. I've always believed that the best way to engage students in a 21st century classroom is to immerse them with the transformative tools that will empower each and every one of them to excel in the world that awaits. My goal is to ignite the spark that propels you and your students into an advanced tomorrow. And your journey into that future starts right now. Classroom Dynamics is supported by Logitech. As education continues to evolve, so does Logitech Education, your partner in content creation for the classroom. With Logitech's cutting-edge technology, students not only learn but also become content creators. Whether it's in person or online, Logitech's tools are designed to inspire educators and learners alike. Capture every educational moment in stunning detail and edit, produce, and share your creative journey with ease. Logitech Education, inspiring the next generation of creators. For more, visit logitech.com/education, transforming classrooms one innovation at a time. Introducing the Logitech Zone Learn headset, a sleek and sophisticated tool crafted to enhance your learning experience. Designed for adaptability, this cutting-edge headset effortlessly transforms any environment into a focused learning zone, be it at home, in a bustling classroom, or on the move. With crystal clear audio and advanced noise-canceling technology, the Zone Learn headset tailors a personalized learning space for your undisturbed concentration. Immerse yourself in coursework, language learning, or virtual presentations with confidence. The precision microphone ensures your voice is heard clearly in virtual classes and meetings, adding impact to your presentations and discussions. Logitech Zone Learn, where sleek design meets advanced technology, revolutionizing the way you learn. Elevate your study sessions, enhance virtual experiences, and embrace the future of education with Logitech. Always connected, always focused, always learning. The Zone Learn headset, your key to success.
For over 20 years, Higher Ground has designed functional technology protection, helping students to work or learn anytime, anywhere. I'm Mark, president of Higher Ground, and I want to share with you how you can get a free sample of any of our rugged shells, sleeves, or clear backpacks. Visit hggear.com/sample and use your school's email and address. One thing, don't tell Alex because he'll be stuck with all the paperwork. Request yours and see for yourself how Higher Ground can help save your students and school downtime and money. Just remember, don't tell Alex.
Mark, what are all these sample requests filling my inbox?
Welcome to Classroom Dynamics, the podcast where we get into the exciting world of technology and education. Hi everybody, I'm your host Adam Todd, and today is a blend of the past meeting the future as we'll chat with Adriana Burkins, the education manager for the Lewis Latimer House Museum in New York City. With almost a decade of experience in museum education, Adriana has left her imprint on various institutions, including the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, North Carolina Museum of Art, and Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum. At the Lewis Latimer House Museum, Adriana oversees the museum's educational offerings. The museum, dedicated to preserving and promoting the legacy of Black inventor Lewis Howard Latimer, focuses on celebrating the contributions of innovators of color to technology and American life. Through exciting STEAM educational programs, including field trips, school visits, after-school residencies, and in-person and virtual family programs, the museum offers a dynamic platform to explore Latimer's life and discuss critical issues like race, class, immigration, and contemporary events. Join us as Adriana Burkins unveils the inspiring journey of Lewis Latimer and guides us through the museum's engaging educational initiatives. Ready yourselves for a fascinating and inspiring dive into the intersection of history, innovation, and education at the Lewis Latimer House Museum. We'll be right back. Are you a dedicated educator searching for fresh and engaging resources to inspire your students? Look no further than Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers. Discover a treasure trove of easy-to-use lesson plans, vibrant visuals, and interactive activities designed to captivate young minds and ignite their love for learning. Unlock the potential within your classroom with Highly Motivated, from differentiated lap books to test prep passages on a multitude of topics. Our wide range of materials cater to most elementary and middle school grade levels. Join the community of passionate teachers who have already transformed their classrooms. Visit Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers and get ready to inspire, motivate, and empower your students like never before. Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers, where knowledge meets inspiration. She's the education manager for the Lewis Latimer House Museum in New York City, where she oversees the museum's educational programs. I'd like to welcome Adriana Burkins to Classroom Dynamics as my special guest. It's great to have you on to talk all about how the past is now meeting the future at the Lewis Latimer House Museum. So welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So when doing some research for myself for this podcast, I learned a lot about Lewis Latimer. I learned that he invented some really amazing things, and his name is really attached to a lot of things that we use, like, the early air conditioner, what people would consider the early air conditioner in a cooling apparatus. Can you share a little bit more about Lewis Latimer's life and how his legacy has inspired the foundation of the Lewis Latimer House Museum?
Sure. To talk about Lewis Latimer, you have to talk about the story that came before him. It's okay to do that. So I don't know if you looked up his parents, but his parents, I guess, had a huge story before he was even born. So in 1842, his parents, George and Rebecca, they escaped from slavery in Virginia and arrived in Boston. So, they were ideally escaping from a southern slave state into a, quote, northern free state, but they were still facing the challenges that Black Americans were facing at the time. Still similar challenges in Boston, but they arrived at a really interesting time. George was very soon after recognized as having escaped from Virginia, and he was arrested and imprisoned for a little bit of time. But they arrived at just the right time in Boston in the 1800s, where the abolitionist movement was kind of growing in that area. And so there was a whole community effort to support and to save George Latimer. So there was the Latimer Journal, there was the North Star Journal. These were published and distributed to over 20,000 people over the span of a year. Word of George's arrest spread, petitions were created and circulated, and several weeks later, his freedom was bought. And his case also sparked the introduction of what was known as the Latimer Law, which tried to prevent the use of government officials and resources to hold enslaved people. Before all of that, before Lewis Latimer was born, all of this was happening. His parents were really affecting abolitionist movements in Boston and the North. People like Frederick Douglass were involved in his case. So that's all kind of leading up to Latimer's own story. He was born in 1848 in Chelsea, Massachusetts. From an early age, I think he was really passionate about kind of supporting his community and really pursuing his passions. Not letting kind of anything stop him. He enlisted in the Union Navy at the age of 16 and forged his age. And it was during this time that he learned how to draw. He taught himself how to draw by observing things around him. This eventually led him to becoming an office boy with the gold firm in Boston. And then he worked from there to be a chief draftsman, a patent expert, and an inventor.
He really did teach himself a lot.
He really did.
Right?
He really did.
Instead of being formally schooled, I know just from the research, they couldn't afford it that long, but when he really had to take that baton and teach himself a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. His, I guess, introduction into patents, the super technical drawings to really show how a design would work or how an invention would work, that was self-taught too. So he was working as the office boy at Crosby and Gold. And he noticed someone doing their patent drawings, and he was really interested in how technical things were, how you can draw something and really bring it to life and understand mechanics even better. So he went out, got his own materials, got his own books, studied day and night, drew day and night, and then he brought his own drawings back into the firm, showed them to his supervisors, and eventually he became the patent expert at the firm, which is really, really exciting. It's pretty cool to learn about that history.
Especially at that time and learning it himself, right? Especially at that time to do that and to learn it on your own. No technology. Right. There was no Google to look this up or YouTube to teach him how to do it. Right.
Alexa.
Yeah, I mean, you think about taking the high road, and really that rough, rugged high road just to get where he got at that time is extraordinarily impressive.
Yeah, yeah. And he worked with some really well-known names. He worked with Hiram Maxim, he worked with Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison. And of course, he, still being a Black man during that time, he still definitely did face racism and prejudice. He was an avid journaler and kind of writes in his journal about having to basically prove himself and prove his work to both his supervisor or supervisees and his colleagues as well.
I was going to ask you about that because it is interesting to learn that he had such a historical connection to Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell, and these such ties to these historical figures, especially with technology and inventions, and around that time of this bustling just explosion of technology. But he's not very well known when it comes to people like Edison and Bell, yet he was so instrumental, right, with all the inventions and everything that has contributed to society. And some of the technology that we still use today, that's still around today, was born from that time frame and from him. So with that, why is it so important to keep that legacy alive, especially with the museum?
That's a great point. Yeah, it's interesting that he had such an amazing career, especially at the time when it was happening. For his patent drawings for the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell, he's not credited for those drawings, but it's again through his own writing. So him putting himself into history, putting himself on paper. That's how we know the dates. Everything kind of links up to prove that he was helping with that patent process for the telephone. And he's a really important example, I think, of why it's important to kind of learn about and really explore the stories of hidden figures like Lewis Latimer, who really improved a lot of things, kind of worked on a lot of things for like a lot of the technology and things that we use today. For the light bulb in particular, he didn't necessarily invent the light bulb or invent the carbon filament, but he worked on a lot of things that made it more practical and more affordable to use. The actual ovens and the process that would kind of bend the filament into, at the time when he was working with Hiram Maxim, into the M shape, but he made it so that the filaments were much stronger, wouldn't break as often, could be then produced more often. He was working on the chemicals used to dry their inert gas that filled the bulbs, the glass blowing equipment to produce the bulbs, which for me is very exciting. I love glass blowing. So to learn about that is really exciting. And I'm trying to think of how to pull in glass blowing into some kind of programming there. He was thinking about sockets and switches as well. And he also wrote a comprehensive manual explaining lighting systems in 1890 that was still like the seminal resource up until 1920. But right, he's not really known, at least at this time, he's really not really known as well as he should be. So that's kind of what our purpose is as a museum, being housed in his home, to really spread that word, to spark an interest in learning more about the teams behind these really great inventors, the people that were doing the research, doing the testing, to really highlight those stories and encourage people to learn more and to learn more about other inventors.
Are there any lesser known inventions or inventions that he kind of was able to bring a little bit further into the future at that time? Or are there lesser known inventions that he's known for that maybe people don't realize?
Yep. So with him, I think it's a little tricky. So he's credited with 7 patents. So I think probably the most important one was the process for manufacturing carbon. But he has a patent for a locking hat and coat rack. There is a patent for like a locking system for bookshelves. He didn't put this into a patent, but he was thinking about safety for elevators. But there are 2 more. There's one that you mentioned as well, the disinfecting and cooling system, which I'm doing a little bit more research because I want to turn that into a lesson to talk about climate change and sustainability practices. But what I was finding is that he was kind of one of the first, at least one of the first, to be patented for thinking about how to combine disinfecting and cooling for homes at that time. Most of what I was seeing was patents for a refrigerating system or for a wearable device like a gas mask. But he's thinking about something that families can use, hook onto their windows in really busy cities like New York. And then there's the train bathroom, which is interesting.
I did hear about that one. I did come across that one. I thought that was pretty interesting.
To be honest, when I first started and was learning, I kind of thought it was a light bulb. It kind of looks like a light bulb, but he was thinking about how to improve the design of toilets for bathrooms on the train. apparently they would kind of you'd open the lid, and at the bottom or below the toilet it would open from the bottom, which meant that any dust, any sparks, anything from the ground that the train was passing over would kind of rush up into the toilet and kind of, would not be very safe or desirable for someone to use. So I was thinking of ways to actually flip that, to make sure that, to change kind of the openings for the toilet to make it safer to use, more desirable to use. One thing that's exciting about that is that in our newly redesigned exhibition, the pad for the train bathroom will be the wallpaper for our bathroom. So it's going to be exciting to see.
There you go.
Yeah,
Incorporated in. That's not well.
exactly.
There's your A for STEAM, right? Your art for STEAM.
Exactly. There you go.
So you have an extensive experience in museum education. So, but how do you design? Because we're on that. You started to hint at it just now. So, how do you design the educational programs at the Lewis Latimer House to not only engage audiences and also to teach, but in issues like race and class and immigration, because he was big with immigration as well through his story.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of ways to, I guess, I don't want to say jump off, but just to look at Latimer as a way to explore so many different things. One, I was going to say before, did you know about his creative pursuits as well?
I did come across a little bit about him with his drawings and just being more in the arts section, like more of poetry and things like that. I thought that was interesting because you don't necessarily always put that together. You may not always put that idea of like drawing and art and writing with invention. Now you would, but I think back then, I don't know if that was I think he brought that together before it was, well before his time, because it does make sense when you have that art portion of it. Because if you're not drawing it and visualizing it, it's kind of hard sometimes to engineer it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so he at least published, there are 22 poems that his family published. He loved to draw. There are portraits that he drew of his family members and just other surroundings around him. He spoke multiple languages and played multiple instruments, so we like to kind of call him a Renaissance man. But he is an amazing, I think, example of the importance of STEAM, because he saw the connections between art and science and was really passionate about finding ways to kind of bridge those, both in his personal life but also in his career. He spoke about a society in Connecticut about the interconnectedness of art and science. So there are kind of creative aspects to latch onto, I think, for lessons, which we kind of like run with. We have a lesson about portraiture. We are encouraging students to kind of design things and draw things out and kind of see them in different ways. But as well, his story is a really great way to kind of look at how we can learn more about race and class and immigration as well. One, in terms of just talking about how important it is to recognize little known or lesser known Black stories. He's a really great example of kind of looking at I don't want to say the success, but kind of what was happening with the Black inventors at the time. There's a man, Henry Baker. He was a Black lawyer and assistant patent examiner who was trying to compile a list of Black inventors in the 1800s. And he was having a lot of trouble because at that time, records it wasn't required to list someone's race on their record. So he was doing this work by word of mouth, by informal networks, by attorneys, and many thought his kind of work was a joke. But by the time that he died in 1928, his list included over 800 Black inventors, including Lewis Latimer. So that's one aspect to really explore, to kind of really try to understand the inventions that have Black origins that we may not know about, but we're still using either that particular object or like a derivative of the object still today. We can learn about the struggle for Black rights and education in the 1800s, both nationally and in New York. He was invited to attend a conference for colored men in Detroit. It was called the National Conference of Colored Men in Detroit in 1895. He wasn't able to attend, but we have documented letters of him passionately advocating for his support and writing for his support. There was a Black inventor in New York who was removed from the Brooklyn School Board. The inventor Samuel R. Scatrone, he supported for as well. He was also teaching drawing to immigrants at the Henry Street Settlement and Lower East Side as well. So there are those aspects of kind of race and class and immigration. There's a story of his own parents. There's also the legacy and just the realities of Latimer being in New York, first in Manhattan, then in Brooklyn, and then in Flushing in particular, which has a long history, a really colorful history and a colorful present. It was occupied by the Lenape Indians or Native Americans, and before colonists arrived. was founded in 1645 by Dutch colonists and eventually became a haven for Quakers. Then Black and Indigenous Americans were moving back or kind of moving in and creating communities. By 1902, when Latimer moved in, there was also a community known as Black Dublin, which was a mix of Black and Irish immigrants working in downtown Flushing. And then since the 60s, Flushing has kind of really expanded and exploded and grown to attract people from all over. The Chinatown here is one of the largest outside of Asia, and it kind of helps to make Queens one of the most ethnically, racially, and religiously diverse urban places on the planet, which is really, really cool.
It is, and it really is.
Right. And it's really exciting for, I think, for us to be literally situated within the community in Flushing, and for us to kind of be able to explore different ways of how to reflect and kind of meet the needs and explore the stories of the communities that are right around us.
Let's go back to how you ended up where you are now. So you were the co-curator of an exhibition at Cooper Hewitt, the Smithsonian Design Museum. What did you do there, and how did that experience influence your approach to curating educational programs at the Lewis Latimer House now?
Sure. So while I was at Cooper Hewitt, I was the education associate. So that meant I was in charge of managing logistics for family programs, for the summer camp that Cooper Hewitt had, for field trips, for outreach programs that both happened locally and nationally, focusing around design education and really illuminating how design is literally a part of everything that we interact with, what we're wearing, what we're seeing, what we're hearing. Really talking about how design, everything has been designed with someone in mind. Eventually, I still don't even know how it happened, how I became a part of the team for Give Me a Sign. If you're in New York, it closed, I think, in September, so go check it out. It celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Symbol Sourcebook, which was a seminal industrial and communication design resource. It was developed in 1972 by Henry Dreyfuss Associates, and we used it as a way to explore symbols and their evolution, how they change by context, through different case studies from 1972 to the present. I worked with a fantastic team, Emily Orr, there is Arpi Uchara and Rachel as well. But I think working at Cooper Hewitt, learning about design education, design thinking, learning about how important it is to pull from your lived experiences just kind of goes hand in hand working at the Latimer House in a few different ways. So one, I guess the idea of design thinking and thinking about how you can improve things around you, I think is a great kind of connection with Latimer. Again, he didn't invent these things. He wasn't the first to invent the light bulb. In general, that was like an innovation that had been in development for a very long time by a lot of different people kind of working on that. But he's a great example of how you can still kind of look around you and see what needs to be changed. How can something be better for someone else?
He's a perfect example of really looking at something and saying, okay, that's great. I see how you did it. But right? But there it is, right? But how do I make that better? Because the light bulb is, the filament is burning out too fast and I have to constantly change it. And it's a pain. How can I make that better so I could keep it running a lot longer? So I think that's it. It's a good point you made, because yes, there are inventions. People do come up with things from scratch, and other people say, oh, why didn't I think of that? That's a good one. And then there are people who look at it and go, that's so great. It helps me. I wish it could do this or that or whatever. And then they go ahead and make it their mission to enhance that invention and really bring it up another notch.
Exactly. Yeah, he's just a great person to think about. I don't know, I can only imagine like what it must have been to have worked with Thomas Edison and kind of think about working with someone who is so well known and so monumental, but still believing in your own abilities to say, hey, I've got an idea. I think this will make it better. I'm putting my hat in the ring.
And then do it. And do it well.
Right?
And do it. So the museum offers, here's the coolest thing, right? Because this is where now 21st century learning and technology do come into play. And that's that bridge between from his time to our time, where, even the pandemic enhanced this, where there's virtual this and virtual that. The museum offers both in-person and virtual family programs. So how do you engage people and balance that engagement? Because there are different formats while maintaining that impact that you want to teach people and show that educational experience and give that to them. How do you balance all that?
It can be tricky. It can definitely be a little tricky. So we do still, I guess, lead or facilitate different types of programs. So we have our in-person programs programs. We have our virtual programs, we have family programs, and then we have some programs that are geared towards adults as well. And it's interesting kind of coming out of like the height of the pandemic and seeing how people are responding to different types of programs and kind of what they allow you to do. So we have one reoccurring monthly STEAM program or STEAM series. And the idea originally was that it would be an intergenerational program. When I joined in November, we were seeing more adults. And I think that was kind of surprising. But we were thinking about it as, I guess it kind of allowed us to recognize or realize that we're able to still kind of address one of our goals of really spreading Latimer's story kind of far and wide outside of New York. That having these programs, different settings, allows us to have different conversations that we might not have had in person. They allow people to kind of participate how they want to virtually. We had a program in February that was highlighting Anna Douglas. So Frederick Douglass's wife, she was the backbone behind his activism and his movement. She was working multiple jobs to support him and to support their children.
Isn't that how it usually is, though?
Yes,
right?
Yes, it is. So again, glad to really put that story out there to show her work, her significance to more people. I didn't know about her beforehand, but we have people joining from all over the place. There was someone from Canada. There was someone from Connecticut, and they were speaking to what they remembered or what they remembered hearing about Latimer's time in Connecticut and Frederick Douglass's time in Connecticut. And then we had someone from Chicago who was about to speak or attend a dedication of a monument to Anna Douglas. So it was amazing to have kind of all these people from so many different places, yet still connected to Latimer in some way. Or to Black history in some way, attending the program. And it feels like it's like kind of obvious, like, of course, this would happen virtually. But I guess you kind of still never know what will happen. And we're seeing like the beauty of this one option, which allows you to kind of participate how you want. For that particular program, we did like a photo transfer technique, which is really fun. But not everyone was participating in it. Not everyone was doing the hands-on part, but they were still fully engaged in the chat, unmuting and really participating in the conversation. And I'm not sure that would have be the case in an in-person program. So maybe, I don't know, you might not feel comfortable kind of just sitting by the side for like an in-person interactive workshop, but virtually it allows you to do that.
What do you think? What do you think he would think if he knew that we were talking about him on a podcast some 150 years later? Right? If you really think about it, the time span, just to be talking about him even today and all the connections, what do you think he would think?
I don't know. I want to say that he, I don't know, might be excited. I think the opportunity to just kind of share his story and just how many people might be listening, how many people might learn, how many people might learn from his story, from his own kind of perseverance and what he was able to do. And it sounds like he was a very community-based person, a very gregarious person. I don't know if he would, be a little shy about, us talking about him. I don't know. I think he'd be happy about it though.
Right. I just think I could just imagine him standing there looking at it and saying, wow, you're doing this on whatever that is, that device that you're doing. And you can see that person, you can hear that person and they're not even standing in the room. Just the idea of my gosh, the whole idea of it, whoever came up with that one, that's amazing. It's so Star Trekky, right? So futuristic, yet I could see, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I can see him almost accepting this kind of stuff because of his mentality and how he just visualized it and how he could almost put it down on paper.
Yeah. Okay. It's funny that you say that. One, we already talked about how he contributed drawings for the telephone application for the patent for the telephone. But there are two drawings that he did. One, I think we will have in the museum, I think on the wall, like as like a wallpaper, where he's drawing himself, and I think he's balancing on something. He has a pencil in his hand, and he's kind of questioning kind of like where he is in his life and kind of what's next for him. And he's kind of like laid out and drawn all these possibilities around him. And if I can remember correctly, there's another drawing, a very like a sketch of him trying to imagine or visualize what it would be like to kind of call or speak to someone in a different nation, kind of like across across like a large body of water as well. I don't think it's fully understood what his idea was, but there is a drawing where he's actually kind of like thinking about this. So it's really funny that you say that. I think he was very, very much so a forward thinker.
I could almost see him.
Yeah.
I can almost see him looking at Zoom and saying, "Okay, I can make that better. Hold on."
All
Hold on
the
a second.
you have sometimes, in general, like you forget to hit the sound or click that one checkbox and you don't have any sound or things might be glitchy. I'm sure he'd think of something.
It would bug him.
I think so.
Listen, this has been so inspirational, such an engaging conversation to have. I'm really glad that we had the chance to learn more about you and, of course, more about the Lewis Latimer House in Queens. It's right in my backyard here, and all of the scientific connections that he's had to STEAM education. Before we go, tell everyone where they can go to find out more about the Lewis Latimer House, the museum, social media, whatever that connects to what you guys do.
Sure. So you can visit us at lewislatimerhouse.org. We are also on all the socials, so TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. You can also find some of our events on Eventbrite, which is really interesting. Feedback from surveys is really interesting. People are learning about our programs through Eventbrite. So it's good to see that that's happening. We are reopening in the summertime, so keep a word out for that. We'll share those official like releases and press releases very soon, but it will be in June, and we are very, very excited. So stay tuned for news about our opening, news about our upcoming programs. And then we also do have an education tab, but we are also thinking about how to really push his story, how to talk more about his air conditioning system, how to talk about the fact that his entire home was picked up and transported like 30 blocks away to where it sits right now, the engineering that went in to make that happen. So we're in the process of reevaluating and revising our lesson plans as well, which I'm really excited about.
That's a good one. How do you pick up a house and move it?
I don't know. We are figuring that out, like the entire thing, which is amazing to think about.
That's great.
So you can visit our website, lewislatimerhouse.org, but we're also on social media, so you can find and just kind of stay aware, stay alert of all the things that are happening with the Lewis Latimer House Museum.
So cool. I love this conversation.
Me too.
This is great. Well, for those of you who have been listening, thank you for tuning in today, and make sure that you share what you've learned or any takeaways or reflections that you've had. We always look forward to hearing from you. Make sure you tag us on Twitter at Class Dynamics or on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. Again, we always look forward to hearing your thoughts on our episodes and sharing the different ways in which you're using what you've learned on the show. So be sure to also help support Classroom Dynamics with as little as $3 a month at classroomdynamicspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Adriana Burkins of the Lewis Latimer House Museum for joining us today on Classroom Dynamics. It really has been such a pleasure having you on with us. I learned a little bit, and I'm sure everyone who's going to listen to the podcast is going to learn a lot more, and hopefully they'll come stop by and say hi to you at the Lewis Latimer House Museum.
That sounds good. We'll see you virtually or we'll see you in person.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Classroom Dynamics, where knowledge and inspiration meets innovation. I hope you've enjoyed today's discussion and found it both insightful and uplifting. As always, my goal is to provide you with practical strategies, engaging stories, and powerful insights that can fuel your motivation as an educator. I believe that when knowledge and inspiration do come together, incredible things can happen in your classroom. And for all of you who may feel that it's too late to strengthen your craft, I challenge you to make it your mission to do so. You've worked hard to get to where you are today, and it's never too late to infuse new life into your work. So why not make today that day to do so? I'm Adam Todd, and you've been listening to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. You can follow Classroom Dynamics on X at Class Dynamics or on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. If you haven't already, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you know a teacher who may benefit from today's show, please share it with them. We'll be back soon with more captivating conversations, inspiring stories, and strategies that you can implement into your everyday routines. Until then, keep igniting that spark in your classroom and never stop believing in the incredible impact you have as an educator. You're more powerful and inspirational than you think. If you like this episode, you'll enjoy our sit-down with Dr. Michael Ford, the visionary principal of the Randolph Howell Elementary STEM School in Maury County, Tennessee. With a prestigious recognition as one of the state's top model STEM schools, Dr. Ford is a leader in his field, guiding schools towards STEM excellence. Winner of the 2023 Excellence in STEM Leadership Award for Tennessee, Dr. Ford is passionate about creating innovative learning environments. Tune in for valuable insights on the transformative power of STEM education, collaboration, and modern classroom dynamics. Get ready to be inspired and revolutionize your approach to STEM education.
What I really encourage them to think about with STEM is answering the question, how can you do what you've always done differently? So how can you do what you've always done differently? And what that does is it kind of takes that pressure off of thinking STEM is this magical object on a shelf somewhere we've got to find and bring into our classroom and be experts at, because that's not what it is.